I remember the first time I felt something was off. It wasn't in the way they spoke, but in the way they didn't. There were no apologies, no attempts to make things right, just a shift. The kind of shift you feel in your gut before you even understand what it means. It was supposed to be a simple favor. My sister, Victoria, and her fiancé, Ethan, needed somewhere to stay for a few months before their wedding. A temporary arrangement? A favor, that's what I told myself. It was just a favor. It wasn't supposed to turn into this. I had space. I had just sold my stake in my startup. I had made my first real investment portfolio, the kind of thing that makes you feel like you're finally adulting. I was saving for a townhouse. My future was laid out in front of me. Clean, stable. And then they came into my home, into my life, and without realizing it, they took more than just my guest room. 3 months. That was all I had agreed to, 3 months. But that agreement, that word, temporary, had begun to feel like a lie the moment they moved in. The first sign was small, almost imperceptible. The venue deposit for the wedding, $5,000. I told myself it was manageable, a little bump in the road, a wedding deposit. Fine, I could handle that, but it didn't stop there. A few days later, Victoria called again. Her voice strained, almost too casual, as if she was rehearsing. "We're a little short on the wedding expenses," she said. "Just a few more deposits to make. Can we use the account for another $5,000? Use the account. I didn't agree to that, but it was family. And the word family always has a way of pulling at you. So I transferred the money thinking this will be the last time. After this, we'll be fine. But it wasn't the last time, it never was. The numbers began to climb faster than I expected. What started as manageable expenses grew into something unrecognizable. A taste for luxury, a craving for excess. A wedding was supposed to be an event, not an endless stream of transactions. Yet that's exactly what it became. An event, yes, but one built on my dime without any of the gratitude that should have come with it. Then came the crypto exchange. One night around 2:14 a.m., I saw the notification on my phone. $7,500. I froze, my heart raced. What is this? I walked into the kitchen where Ethan was sitting at the counter, his laptop open. The glow from the screen painted his face in a ghostly light. He didn't even look startled when I walked in. "It's arbitrage," he said, as if that explained everything. "Arbitrage," I repeated, my voice low. "With my wedding account?" He shrugged. "It's fluid capital," he said, calm as ever. "Fluid capital, that's what he called it. Capital, my capital poured into a gamble that wasn't even mine to make." I requested the invoices the next morning. Transparency, I told them. I want to know where my money's going. But the moment I asked for accountability, everything shifted. Victoria's voice turned defensive, her tone accusing, as if I were the one doing something wrong by asking for transparency. "Do you think we're stealing from you?" she demanded, her eyes flashing. Stealing, I hadn't said the word. But in her eyes, it was already there. The word hung in the air, thick and suffocating. And for the first time, I realized something. I wasn't just being generous. I was being manipulated. I didn't know it then, but I was already in deeper than I had ever imagined. That night, I checked the account again. The balance was higher than it had ever been. $28,000. My heart dropped. This wasn't temporary. This wasn't a simple favor. This was something else entirely. Something had changed, and I hadn't noticed until it was too late. It was late one night when I first felt the full weight of it, the weight of everything shifting beneath me. I was sitting at my desk, the hum of the city outside barely reaching my ears as I scrolled through the transaction history. Each line, each vendor, each amount was beginning to blur together. The numbers were no longer just numbers. They were signs of something I wasn't sure I could fix. Emerald Coast Consulting, $12,000. I looked at the name, but nothing came up when I searched. No business registration, no website, nothing. Just a ghost of a company existing in a place where no one had asked questions before. I didn't have to ask. I already knew. This wasn't about wedding expenses anymore. This was about something far bigger. I tried to let it go. I told myself that it was just one mistake, a misunderstanding, a random slip-up. But the next day I found more transfers, more suspicious charges. The total had reached $48,000. $48,000 in 6 months. What the hell was happening? I wasn't stupid. I wasn't blind. But I had given them the benefit of the doubt. Until I couldn't anymore. Every new expense felt like a weight on my chest. Each one added to the burden I didn't sign up for. My sister's wedding had become a pipeline for them, a financial vehicle, and I was in the driver's seat, but I hadn't been asked if I even wanted to drive. I remember that day so clearly. My mother called me, her voice full of concern, the way it always was when things got too close to the bone. "Victoria feels humiliated," she said. "She says you're making her feel like she's stealing from you." Stealing? I didn't accuse her of stealing, but the words were already there, weren't they? It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about control. Their control over me. Over my resources, over my home. I couldn't ignore it any longer. This wasn't just a simple request anymore. It was a pattern. It was planned. And for the first time, I felt the cold chill of betrayal. Not just from Victoria, but from Ethan too. He had never been the supportive fiancé I thought he was. He wasn't there for her because he loved her. He was there because he wanted something. Something I couldn't yet define, but I could feel it. Something darker than I had ever known. I had been too generous, too forgiving, too silent. That silence, it had been my mistake. I thought if I just stayed quiet, if I just helped a little, they'd see my value. They'd see I was the stable one, the reliable one. But they weren't valuing me. They were using me. The night I found the storage unit charge was the night it all hit me. $2,100 for legal document preparation. I stared at the screen, the words blurring in front of me. Legal document preparation? That wasn't for a wedding. That wasn't for a party. That was for something else, something far more sinister. I wasn't prepared for the avalanche that was coming, but I knew one thing for sure: I wasn't going to be the one caught under it. The pieces were coming together whether I wanted them to or not. Every time I tried to push it all away, to convince myself it was just a phase, the truth forced its way back in. There was no escaping it now. It had gone from suspicion to certainty, and I was no longer the passive sister trying to keep the peace. I was a woman in control of her own narrative, and they were about to learn that. It was just past midnight when I logged in again. The numbers didn't surprise me anymore. I expected the new charge, the new transfer, the new attempt to breach the limits they thought were in place. I wasn't sleeping much these days. Every time I closed my eyes, all I could see was the betrayal. It wasn't the money that hurt. It was the motive behind it. The constant undermining, the shifting of responsibility, the silent undermining of everything I had built for myself. It was suffocating. $12,000, another transfer, destination, Emerald Coast Consulting, and there it was again, a third-party processor, another external account, another way to hide the trail to make it harder to follow. They were playing a game I wasn't even sure I understood, but I knew one thing: they thought they had me. They thought I wouldn't notice, but I was watching every single detail. When I confronted Ethan, he looked at me with that same calm demeanor, that mask of confidence. "You're overreacting," he said. "We were just exploring some options." Exploring? I wasn't exploring anything. They were expanding. They were stretching my limits, seeing how much I could tolerate, testing me. It wasn't about the wedding anymore. It was about control. They wanted to own me, own my space, own my money, own my future. I wasn't going to let that happen. The next day, I went to work as usual, but my mind was elsewhere. I could hear the whispers in my head, louder than the hum of the office, louder than the conversations around me. They think I won't fight. They think I'll just sit here and let them do this to me. By lunch, I was already planning my next move. I called the bank's fraud department. I needed to make sure everything was in place. The woman on the other end of the line listened patiently as I listed the charges, the third-party processors, the accounts linked to Ethan's device. This wasn't just about mismanagement. This was financial exploitation. I could hear her typing on the other end. "We'll start an internal review," she said. "We'll freeze the account if necessary." If necessary, it wasn't necessary, it was required. But I didn't say that, not yet. I hung up the phone and exhaled slowly. For the first time in months, I felt like I had the upper hand. I wasn't just a passive observer in my own life. I was making moves. The calm before the storm is never peaceful. It's the kind of silence that makes your skin crawl, the kind where everything feels still, but you know the chaos is coming. I could feel it in the air as I walked into the condo that evening. They didn't speak to me directly, but the tension in the room was palpable. Victoria was on her phone, scrolling through wedding plans, pretending like everything was fine. But her eyes kept flicking over to me like she was waiting for something, waiting for me to break, waiting for me to react. Ethan was pacing, his phone pressed to his ear. The same rehearsed calm, the same confidence. But I could see through it now. I could see that the confidence was really just a facade. I moved through the space slowly, deliberately. Each step, each breath was calculated. They thought I wouldn't fight. They thought I didn't have it in me to stand up to them. But they were wrong. That night, I didn't check the account right away. I didn't want them to know what I was doing. But I couldn't sleep, not with everything weighing on me. The next morning, before I even left for work, I checked the transactions again. I had learned that the more I watched, the more they slipped up. And there it was, another transfer. Another $15,000 to Emerald Coast Consulting. The third party, the routing, the pattern, it was all there, no more mistakes. This wasn't an accident anymore. I didn't react immediately. I didn't pick up the phone and confront them. Not yet. They were expecting that. They were waiting for me to lose my temper. Instead, I sat there in silence, letting the gravity of the situation settle around me. I was in control now. Later that evening, after I'd gathered everything, every document, every transaction history, I sat at my desk and began to compile it all. This was no longer about being the quiet, stable sister who took care of everything. This was about securing my future. This was about putting an end to it once and for all. They thought they had power over me. But it was always mine to take back. I printed out every document, the emails, the transaction logs, the bank statements. The total was now over $100,000, $100,000. And they thought I hadn't noticed. The cold truth hit me like a slap to the face. This wasn't a simple misunderstanding. This wasn't a sisterly favor gone wrong. This was deliberate. Every transfer, every charge, every single action had been calculated, and I had been blind to it. I made my move that night. I called my attorney. I needed to know what I was up against. He listened patiently as I explained everything, the forged signatures, the fake vendors, the secret storage units, and the growing mountain of lies. "This is financial fraud," he said after a long silence. "But it's more than that. They've been trying to control you, and if you don't act first, you're going to have to spend the rest of your life fighting this. It'll be on their terms." Their terms, that phrase hung in the air like smoke. I wasn't going to fight on their terms. I wasn't going to let them spin this story in their favor. By the time I went to bed that night, I had everything I needed. I had my plan. They thought they could push me into the background. They thought they could control me with their whispers, their accusations, their manipulations. But I was done playing their game. I woke up the next morning, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't consumed by doubt. The calm that had settled over me the night before was still there, but now it was different. It wasn't just peace, it was strategy. And strategy, when done right, is louder than any accusation they could throw at me. As I made my way through my morning routine, coffee brewing, laptop opening, transaction logs ready for review, I felt something shift. This wasn't about family anymore. This wasn't about wedding expenses or temporary access. This was about something far more crucial: boundaries, my power. I didn't let them know I was onto them. Not yet. They still thought they were ahead of me. They still thought I was the calm, obedient sister who would quietly watch as they pulled the strings. But I wasn't. I had spent months meticulously gathering evidence. The more I went through the transaction logs, the more everything made sense. The pattern was undeniable: fraud, manipulation, and a very calculated attempt at controlling me, not just financially, but emotionally. I had everything. They thought I was reactive, but I wasn't. I was prepared. By noon, I was sitting across from my attorney. I laid everything out for him: every document, every charge, every draft of the forged signatures, the list of fake vendors, the transactions linked to third-party accounts. And finally, the clincher, the forged power of attorney. It was all laid bare in front of me. He looked at me, his expression hardening. "This is a case, and if you don't act first, they will use everything against you. The best thing you can do is take control of the narrative now." Control the narrative? That was the key. That's what they had been doing all along, controlling the narrative, making me feel like I was overreacting, like I was crazy. But no more. The plan was set into motion. I had already taken the necessary steps. The fraud alert had been placed. The bank had frozen the account. The credit reports had been flagged, and now I had my attorney drafting the official demand letter. 30 days. 30 days to repay every cent they had stolen from me, or I would file for civil litigation. I was no longer the victim in this story. The next morning, everything was in place. My phone buzzed with notifications, texts from Victoria, missed calls from Ethan. They were starting to feel the heat, but they still didn't know what was coming. By late afternoon, the first wave hit. The yacht deposit failed. The venue was pulling out. Victoria called, her voice frantic, but I could hear the hint of desperation behind it. This was no longer about the wedding. It was about control. "You ruined everything," she said through clenched teeth. "You ruined my wedding." I let her words hang in the air, the accusations, the blame. They thought it was over. They thought they could make me feel guilty, but I didn't flinch. I wasn't the one who had ruined anything. The truth was sitting in front of me, clearly visible, all of it. I had everything I needed, and they had no idea I was already several steps ahead of them. This was it, the moment where everything changed. Victoria and Ethan came over to the condo later that evening. Their faces were tight, eyes darting around the room, filled with more than just anger. There was fear now. They had started to realize the game was over. Ethan's jaw tightened as he stood in front of me, trying to play the calm, composed one. "You can't do this," he said. "You can't just shut us out." I didn't answer him. I didn't need to. I opened my laptop, spun it around, and placed it in front of him. The numbers were there, every transaction, every amount, $120,000. "Explain it," I said quietly. He stared at the screen, his face paling. He didn't speak. Victoria, her voice cracking, tried to interject. "You promised to help us," she shouted, her face reddening. "I promised limited access," I said, my voice steady. "You crossed a line and now it's over." The room was thick with tension, their anger simmering, but I wasn't intimidated. The final move was mine. I had already sent the demand letter. They had 30 days to repay the full amount. If not, the next step would be civil litigation for financial fraud and identity misrepresentation. They couldn't hide anymore. It was all out in the open, documented and undeniable. As they left that night, I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel victorious. But I did feel something I hadn't felt in months: control. I had taken the power back. I had drawn the line, and now they couldn't cross it. And just like that, I wasn't the one being positioned. They were. They thought I was just the stable one, the quiet one, the one who wouldn't fight. But now they knew stability doesn't mean weakness. The game was over. The game was over.